All right, what's up, guys? Dan here, and welcome back to the Dan Vass Show. If you guys are listening on the Dan Vass Show and on the YouTube channel, on youtube.com/Dan Vass, I've got my awesome friend and mentor, Daniel DiPiazza, right here at Rich20Something, and I've got him on the show, on the channel today. And a lot of you, maybe you guys have already heard of Daniel. You probably already heard of Daniel in the online space. Maybe you know him from the awesome business he's been doing, from his social media pages, and just from a lot of different things. So yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. And you know what? Because I turned 30 in May, I've officially changed my handle to @Daniel DiPiazza. So I lost like 5,000 followers, but it's okay. It's okay. I'm gonna get new ones.
Yeah, dude. It's evolution, man. It's all good.
Evolution. Yep.
Yeah, maybe we can cover that on the podcast as well today. So
for sure.
I'm very, for me, right, having you right now on this interview is just insane, because when I was getting started my entrepreneurial journey, one of the books that I had bought when I was literally cleaning windows was your book at Rich20Something with the
nice.
Yeah, and for me, like I remember I ordered it, and it was during the summer when I was cleaning windows to save up money to start my e-commerce business on Amazon. And when I came home after like 12 hours of cleaning windows with my friend, I came home and the book was there. And I literally did not go to sleep that night. I was reading the book and I just read it, and I finished it the whole night in one night. And so it just blew my mind. And it at the time when I was just starting out, when I was just kind of, the struggling entrepreneur phase, right?
Yep.
For me, it was just like an eye opener, and it confirmed everything I believed, that, online business is real, and that right now in the 21st century, you should be going into business for yourself, especially online, social media. Yep. And all that kind of stuff. So that's exactly what I did. So thank you very much for being an amazing inspiration.
Well, thank you so much for being alive and proving that it works.
Yeah, it does. It definitely does. So tell us about your story, and tell us about, how you grew up, what your family was like, and just what your childhood was like.
The hero's journey, right? So, okay, listen, first of all, I think that one of the important things to note is that when you talk about your story and when other people hear your story, the reason why you talk about it is because everyone is looking for a piece of someone's story where they can say, oh, he or she is just like me, and if they've done it, then I can do it too. And so my story isn't necessarily that unique from a lot of other entrepreneurs, but every time that you tell your story, the people listening are going to find something to resonate with, and it's going to make sense to them in their own way. And hopefully, the more people hear my story, the more people will realize that I'm actually not that much different. You're not that much different. And it won't be an amazing story in terms of like, oh wow, what an incredible feat. It will be more like, oh, that's achievable,
Yeah.
I put up a post today on IG. It was a screenshot of something that said 8 years ago, and it says, I have an exit strategy for this job. I have my jetpack on. Who's coming with me?
Oh, I saw that. I saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
It's perfect timing for this. 8 years ago, this guy working at a restaurant. How? What happened? Why? What was the food like? The food was awesome. That's the first thing you need to know. When you work at a restaurant, you get a lot of free food. I work at a steakhouse, so I'm very good at cooking steak now. I can tell you all the way from blue rare to well done, and I know exactly what to do with it. That was the number one skill I picked up. Working at a restaurant after college, working at a bunch of different jobs. I worked at UPS with the brown short shorts, which I look fantastic in. I worked at a museum gift shop. I worked at a flower store. I did door-to-door stuff. I did all these jobs. Everyone does these jobs. And the reason I did them is because I didn't want to go back and do more school when I was done. I thought I had a degree in communications, which is basically the degree that says I don't know what I want to do. Okay. So I didn't want to go back and get more school. I didn't necessarily want to go into corporate. You worked at a bank. You know this. That's not fun.
No.
That's not fun.
Isn't fun.
We talked about that, so I felt very trapped, and I worked at a job that was the easiest to get. This is in Atlanta, so 8 years ago. And it got to the point where I was there, and I thought to myself, if I have to keep doing this, there's really not much point to being alive. That might sound dramatic. I sent you this video the other day, this guy deadlifting. He said, there's no point in being alive if you can't do deadlift. Yeah. And I thought there's no point in being alive if you just have to be at the restaurant all day.
There's the link.
I was up for it. I was up for 10 plus hours a day. At a restaurant, by the way, you make $2 an hour plus tips. So you don't make any money.
That's ridiculous.
Okay, it was ridiculous.
$2 an hour? That's absurd.
Yeah, it's actually should be illegal. It should be illegal. It probably is illegal, but so I was just very unhappy, and this unhappiness though created an energy in me where I was like, okay, I'm not just going to stick around and just be unhappy. Like, let's do something with this emotion I'm feeling. Like, what am I going to do? So I started thinking, okay, what am I good at? And over a period of years, like that question of what am I good at and what can I do with that has served me throughout the years. So for me, the first thing was, all right, well, I'm a pretty smart guy. I've always gotten good grades on tests and standardized tests. If you're listening to this right now, you're watching this, you're in high school or college, you're very familiar with SAT. The SAT is it's a formal test for passing college admissions. And I'm very good at that. And I was actually a teacher in the SAT when I was in college. So I thought, you know what, maybe I can open a business around this. Maybe there's some way I can teach students. And that ended up working. I ended up in Atlanta partnering up with different private instructors and different counselors. There's a dog under me. Private instructors, private counselors, and over time building up a really healthy client base. So I'm like, oh great, I'm a consultant now, which is a job. This is something I can really do. And I built that and I grew that and that gave me confidence. And then over the years, I kept asking myself, what skills do I have? What skills do I have? And I went from that, which was a pretty easy business, to doing web design and development and building a team around that, growing that business into 6 and 7 figures, and moving on from that and doing consulting. And then from there, I thought, I'd really like to talk to more people about this. And I started writing about it. And my writing and the videos I was making in the social media got a lot of attention. Some people will say it's because I'm very good looking, but I think it's mostly because of the information is so high quality. So if you're just listening on the podcast, you can't see the YouTube, you can't confirm this fact. You don't know if I'm good looking or not. So just pretend it's the information.
Just accept it as true.
Yeah. Accept it as true. Yeah. It's the information. And so I started writing on different topics in entrepreneurship, how I got my start, and people started picking it up, and it created this snowball effect where, now 8 years later, my career really revolves around me helping people get to the next level. And that's why we're here today.
Awesome, man. So now, going back to the steakhouse and all that kind of stuff, like, did you always have that entrepreneurial drive, or was there a moment in your life where maybe you've just had enough, or maybe it was something in your childhood or your family history that really like sparked that entrepreneurship in you?
For me, and I wrote this in my book too, there was this specific event when I was at the restaurant, and I was scooping these butter balls.
Was it the salad? You were preparing the salad.
It was butter balls.
Right.
Okay. So there's these long trays. Each tray can hold about 50 butter scoops, and you put them in the bread, to give it the baskets. And I was scooping all these butter balls, and the butter was still cold, so it wasn't a perfectly round ball. It was kind of like a boulder. It wasn't perfectly round. And my manager comes up behind me. Imagine Scott. His name is Scott. 6'3", shaggy blonde hair, dorky glasses, probably some tape in the middle here. And he's looking over my shoulder, and he's like, I don't like these balls. They're a little bit jagged. They don't really match up to Longhorn standard. I'm gonna need you to do them again. And I looked at these, and I'd done 9 trays of these, 9 times 50. I'd done about 450 of these balls. It was about 9:30 in the morning. Restaurant opened at 10. He wants me to redo all these. I think to myself, okay, I'm gonna have a mental breakdown. If my life has gotten to the point where I'm being judged on the roundness of my butter balls, there needs to be a change.
Yeah.
And that sparked the idea in my head of, what am I going to do to get out of this? And I just jujitsu'd my way out of it from there.
And how long has it been? 8 years? 8 years?
It's been 8 years.
8 years. 8 years later.
Yeah.
And now best-selling author. We got the book.
Best-selling author. Yeah.
We got off the mentorship. Yeah. It's just awesome, man.
It's the American dream. I've made millions of dollars, written a best-selling book. I'm so happy in Southern California. It's like, it looks great on paper. The reality is it's taken a lot of work. It's been very challenging at times. It's been one of the hardest roads I could have taken. It would have been easier to keep a job, honestly. It would have been easier, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's what would have made me happy.
No, it definitely would have not been more fulfilling, obviously.
No.
So in those 8 years, you've gone from pretty much broke, being judged for your butter balls, all the way to 6 figures and then later 7 figures, correct?
Yeah.
So, going from 6 figures to 7 figures, and I believe this is a really big factor. Like with a lot of people get stuck at 6 figures, right? And I actually saw you just wrote an article talking about it like recently, Right. So
Entrepreneur Magazine, yeah.
Yeah. So what would you say is the deciding factor, or like the main difference between people that stay at six figures and the people that get to six figures?
This is something that you might not be thinking about, but it's the absolute truth. It's pattern recognition. You have to be able to see and understand what you're doing inside of your business from a higher perspective so that you can make changes. There are three basic patterns. I call them turning points, learning points, earning points. So like there are certain parts of the entrepreneurial journey where you're going to reach a pivotal decision and you have to make the right choice. So for you, for instance, it was like, let me see if I can create a course on FBA. Let me see what happens. Let me see. I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know if it's going to be the right move, but let me give it a try. And that was a turning point for you. And you have to be able to identify those turning points. Another place would be a learning point. It's like you've made a mistake or you've tried something and it hasn't worked. You have to be able to learn from that information and reintegrate it, right? You have to understand why something did or didn't work, be able to learn from it or learn a new skill, right? And then another thing is earning point. So it's like when you get stuck at that six-figure mark, what do you do to differentiate yourself? If you're offering a service, do you just offer the same thing as everyone else and hope that you make more, or do you try to create more value around what you're doing? If you're offering a product, are you looking for things that people really want and need, and are you scaling that? So at six figures, usually the problem is that the owner of the business doesn't really understand how to actually grow a business. They understand how to have a hustle, essentially. And the difference between 6 and 7 figures is a hustle and an actual business. And I will say this too, by the way, lots of people think that just having a shiny website and a few contractors that work for you is a business. It's not. A business is a collection of not only people, but systems and processes, all streamlined and focused on an idea, on delivery of a product, and on a mission. And if you don't have that, you just have a website. So you have to really understand that building a business is more than just making money. It's everything else in addition to the money. And the money is actually the last piece. And a lot of six-figure business owners are so focused on making the money that they don't build the machinery around the business that's going to take to get to the seven-figure point.
Amazing. I never heard it put like in exactly that way, but it completely makes sense because especially how you said with me, with the course, I was making multiple six figures with my Amazon FBA business and still am. But for me, in my head, I knew that the course would be the next step just because, like, first of all, it was a pattern, like you said, and also it was extremely scalable. Like it was 7-figure scalable, right? And of course, also in my head, I knew that a course was not 8-figure scalable, right? So currently I'm at the 7-figure stage, but I'm definitely not at the 8-figure stage. But that's because of the, like I made one move from 6 figures, which got me to 7 figures. So now I have to make another move, right? As you said, something totally different, right? To get to 8.
Yeah, probably a few moves.
So awesome, man. So did you realize this early when you were making 6 figures, or like were you making 6 figures for a long time and banging your head against the wall, and then you finally got to 7 figures? What was it?
I was banging my head for at least 3 years, and I don't think it's something that I think it's something that you have to. Everyone comes to their own realization at their own time, and sometimes you come to the realization and then you make the better decision, and sometimes you like make the right decision quickly and you have to look back and understand why it worked. So if you are able to start making 6 and 7 figures quickly and it works right away, sometimes you'll think that you're unstoppable, that everything you try works, that it's all going to work out, and that's how it's supposed to be. But really what happened is you made a series of great decisions. You have to understand why you made those decisions and how you can replicate that. So for me, it was just, it was like a lot of reading, a lot of learning, a lot of talking to friends, hiring coaches and mentors. Like it wasn't necessarily it wasn't overnight. It really was the full 8 years, and I think that that's something that as an entrepreneur you have to be prepared for, because even outside of like the money, there's so much growth that happens from when you decide to start a business to, wherever you are in that journey, that you have to really be prepared to be uncomfortable and not think that, because you're like, okay, well, what happened between 6 and 7 figures? Not think that just hitting a revenue milestone is the goal. That's like one piece of the bigger goal,
Yeah. So one of your businesses was teaching freelancing to people, right? Mm-hmm. And how was that? Like, how did you get to that, teaching freelancing? Were you freelancing at one point? Is that how you were? I think that's how you were making your six figures, right? And you grew a bunch of freelancing businesses to 6 figures, and then you had created a course, correct?
Yep. That's what you do. I mean, listen, whenever you listen to this, it's 2018 now, but this is what This is what the cool kids are doing. Start a business, and if it works, make a course on how you did it. I mean, it's a pretty funny model. Like, I make fun of it because, to be honest with you, I've just been in the information product space for so much time now that I'm just like, okay, it's kind of a joke of itself. But it really is. This is a proven business, not even a model, but a pattern. If you can start a successful business and really get good at it, you can make more money off teaching that business than you can off the business itself. Because there are more people that want to learn how to do the business than there probably is actual money in the business you are learning. And I didn't even know that was how it was going to be. So I started off freelancing. Like I said, I was doing test prep, I was doing consulting and coaching, I was doing web design and development, and all those were like six figures and healthy. But when I started to get more questions about those businesses, I realized that my bigger opportunity, and this is a turning point for me, the bigger opportunity here was creating an audience to teach that at scale. And that's when the seven figures started to take off.
Awesome. Yeah. So what were some of the most life-changing points in your entrepreneurial career? And, as entrepreneurs, I know that you travel a lot. I travel a lot. And, sometimes I find myself on another side of the world, another part of the world.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, it's just life-changing moments, right? And it's just, you don't see it coming. And so can you share with us, and I know you're extremely spiritual, which is amazing because we'll talk about that as well. We'll cover that. So yeah, share with us some of your most life-changing moments. Maybe they involved some kind of some obstacles that you had to overcome.
Oh man, that's a good one. I mean, I have to think of the most life-changing ones. For me, there were a few. So moving out to California was a big one. We moved out 5 years ago. And obviously it's, if you're on the East Coast, California is as far as you can go in the US. And I traveled before that, but relocating myself to a new area was big. Life-changing moments. I'd say for me, the biggest life-changing moment for me, or one of the ones that I think about when you ask me this question is, there was a moment in 2014, and I was at a co-working space, and I still have my corporate address there. And I'd been there for a few months, and this was right when the courses were starting to take off, but they weren't quite getting the speed I needed them to.
Your courses?
My courses. Yeah. This is 4 years ago. This is the beginning of 2014, about 4.5 years ago. And I wasn't quite getting the results I wanted, and I was feeling burnt out. And this wasn't necessarily just one conversation with myself, but over a series of conversations with myself in that office. I thought to myself, okay, listen, you're renting office space here. You're paying for this. You're paying to create something, and you need to create something. You have an opportunity here, and you moved all the way out to California to be able to take this opportunity. You have people who want to hear from you. It's time for you to step up. And over the period of a few months, I made this decision, and I just decided to really treat this like a real enterprise. Because you have to understand, for me, especially with the online business and I started off blogging is how I started, and I didn't take it as seriously as it would appear that I do now, because I have all these articles out there, and I have my social media. 4.5 years ago, it was just me blogging on a website with a very small email list. And even though I'd made money in other areas, I wasn't sure how I was going to do things online. And I made a decision at this critical juncture to say, I'm going to treat this like a business. I'm really going to take this seriously. And something in my head clicked. And from that moment on, I started to view things, like I was describing to you before, as not just a website with one blogger behind it, but as a company with a vision, with a mission, with a purpose, with systems and processes, and understanding that this is bigger than just what I could type in a blog post. And when I had that realization, it gave me a lot of clarity and a lot of peace, because I knew that it wasn't just about what I was doing day to day. There was a bigger goal afoot, and I've kept that feeling in my mind over the years as I've encountered obstacles. I always think of what's the big mission here? I had recently this year, my ex did a company. My business partner and I had a company with a bunch of different venture capitalists, and we were building this company, this media company, and we in June decided to sell our shares next to the company. And I used this same framework, the same way of thinking, which is just what's the bigger goal here? What's the bigger mission? And for me, having that first spark just a few years ago was what allowed me to really start taking myself seriously as an internet entrepreneur. And since then, if you look back at just the way the internet space has changed, between 2015 and 2018, internet's gotten weird. with like influencers and different ways to sell and distribute products and the pace of media. And so I think I took it very seriously at a perfect time. But if I hadn't made that decision, I don't know what I'd be doing, but I think I would have gotten left behind in what was this huge eclipse of like energy and information and people and friends. If I hadn't taken it seriously, we wouldn't be talking right now, because I wouldn't have taken it seriously enough to invest the time to create this brand that attracts people, that got me the book deal. Like if I hadn't taken it seriously, I wouldn't be here right now. So it was that decision, and that was a really powerful moment for me.
Awesome. Now, in your book, you cover some of the best ways for somebody to start an online business and to, quit their 9-to-5 jobs and just really start something. Because obviously, you know this, and I believe that, like the main problem with most people, you ask them, hey, like, why don't you start an online business? Let's just say, right? Any person on the street. Well, I want to, but I don't know where to start, and I don't know if it's for me, right? So now, as part of a bigger picture here, with, like you said, the changes of the internet between 2015 and 2018. What do you see as the biggest opportunities today for somebody to start an online business, to take it to 6 figures, and then if they want to take it to 7 figures as well, like just some, income streams or some online businesses that, come up to your mind?
Well, I mean, the thing is online business, like the whole term of online business is such a broad term. You can do anything online, which doesn't help you if you're trying to get more specific, but like, for me, I started in the content space and built out information products. That's one way you could do it. You started off doing FBA. There are other people who do other models. There are people who do coaching and consulting and do services. There's other people who do who just focus on YouTube and monetize their channels. There's all these things you can do. There's 2 ways you can do it, okay, of going about thinking about the right model. The first way you can do it is you can say, what's the most popular and how and what's the easiest to like hack in terms of like, FBA, for instance. There's so many good courses like yours out there where you can like watch the material, and if you really try, it will work. If you really, really dedicate it to yourself, or dedicate yourself to it, it will work. Most people aren't going to be successful with it because it is hard. There's a lot of work involved. It takes a lot of time. And it's just like anything else. Like a lot of people fail at school, So there's the model of like finding proven models and methods that have worked and just crushing them. There's that, and that pretty much works. And you can look for all these courses out there, and you can find your match. But there's also the model of saying, now, honestly, there's a market for just individual personalities. You can build a personal brand around the things that you think are awesome, the things that you like, and you can put those out on all these various platforms we have now, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and you can build a following of people who will then become essentially your marketing engine. And this is the influencer route, and you can build then products, courses, events, and advertisement around just a market based on your personal ideas, which, some people might sneer at that and say, oh, that's not a business. And maybe 2 or 3 years ago it wasn't. Now it is. And I don't see it going away because you know why? Because big brands are paying for influencers to advertise their stuff. So that's not going away anytime soon. And these social networks thrive on influencers because they get most of their engagement from regular users based on the fact that regular users, just people who just consume content, are looking for influencers, people who they identify with to follow. And if you can become one of those, you can then take a small piece of that power from the platform and make it your own. And lots of friends that I have now who didn't even know this was a thing 2, 3, 4 years ago are making full-time, extremely good livings as influencers. And not even advertising that you should do that. I think what you should do is figure out where you're good at, what your skills are, and I think you should find a lane online where that makes sense. So for instance, if you're very data-driven, you're organized, and if you can execute tasks, FBA would be a great model because it's like, okay, here's the products I'm looking for, here's where I'm looking to buy, here are the numbers, here are the software programs to run. Like you can run that system. If you're more of a creative, there's plenty of ways that you can create things online, whether you want to make an awesome YouTube channel and monetize that, or whether you want to do tons of other things. So like, I think you should figure out what you're good at. It wasn't a very good example, but like, I think you understand where I'm going. Figure out what you're good at first. Figure out what platform or space online has a lane for you to monetize that, and then understand that like your success in the online space is going to be dependent on 1, you being able to model what others are doing successfully, and 2, to iterate quickly because things change very rapidly. And if I was just doing the same thing on social media or inside of an information product business or inside of another area of my business as I was doing 3 years ago, if I was doing the same thing now that I was 3 years ago, it would no longer work. So you have to be able to move quickly. And I think that's why it's a ripe opportunity for young people, especially from anywhere from 18 to 35 and beyond, but especially that sweet spot of Gen Y and Gen Z. We're so used to the internet now that we can make those quick moves. If you're listening to this podcast right now, if you can listen to a podcast, you have all the technical knowledge you need to be a millionaire online. That's what you need to understand. If you can click a button, you can do it. There isn't a technical barrier anymore. There's a barrier of will. There's a barrier of perceived lack of time. There's a mental barrier behind thinking that you're not smart enough, you can't do it. All those things aren't true. So you just need to decide where you're going to focus your energy and your time and commit to that, and you'll start to see some results, and you make decisions based on those results.
Yeah, and that was an amazing way of explaining it. I wholeheartedly agree. And I think that everybody, specifically, I might be radical in this, but I think that everybody, especially, if you're young, if you're 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, like you should seriously explore an online business, because college, university, all that kind of stuff, it's just, we're not going to talk about it being a scam or anything like that, but, it's just going away, right? And slowly, it's just becoming more and more obsolete. And right now, like you said, if you are listening to this podcast right now, you have all the technical knowledge you need to become a millionaire, right? So that's what, I want people to understand. But awesome, man. So tell us, are you spiritual?
Well, I am.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I
want to... You ask these silly questions, you know the answers to.
So now, spirituality is such a broad, word. I think if I asked you, what kind of spirituality do you so me, in terms of my spirituality, I was zero. So before I had become an entrepreneur, zero. I just didn't find a reason to. But it's funny because, through my journey, I've had such insanely I've had these realizational moments in my life, and I really started to believe, first of all, in the unseen and the manifestation of the unseen, and how there is a lot more going on than we think, right? And so, yes. And it's kind of hard to explain. It's kind of very abstract, but I've had this insane idea where I don't think it's insane, but there's a lot more to life than what we see. And, do you agree?
Well, you have to look at the evidence. Like, for instance, there are frequencies on the spectrum of light that we can't see that we know exist. We know X-rays exist, we can't see those. We know radio waves exist, that we can't see those. So we can just look at science and know that just logically and experientially, there are things that are real in the world that we can't perceive. So you have to be able to open your mind up to the things you can't see, taste, touch, or feel. If you don't, you're just negating what we've already proven to be true. What your belief is in terms of how those forces affect us is a different thing.
And does that belief, can you shape it in a certain way to help you, let's say in your entrepreneurial journey, for example?
Yeah, I think it's funny. I love how you said it. You're like, I wasn't spiritual at all. Then I started entrepreneurship and I had to find God.
Yeah.
Well, I think okay. Two things is one, entrepreneurs are skilled at taking the invisible and making it visible. Because whatever we do, when we create a business, that business was nothing but information in our brains, which is essentially just electrical impulses batting around in our neurons and creating, synaptic flashes and pasting down our neural network. Like, all that stuff was non-physical, and it was in our brain. When you thought for the first time of the Amazon Freedom Course, I don't know if you can use the word Amazon anymore, but when you thought of the course for the first time, that wasn't real. And through this non-physical thing in your mind, you then did work in the real world to create a physical result. So then you can go and look at your car and you can say, I had a thought in my head, I did something in the real world, I took it from non-physical to physical, and then I got an actual result. Now, if you step back and look at that, you can really then prove that what you think creates your reality. And if you think about all the thoughts that you have on a daily basis, you can realize that your thoughts are leading up to the things that you have in your life. And then it becomes not just weird, hokey-pokey science fiction, it becomes very real to you.
So then, how do people go about controlling their thoughts so they get the desired results that they want out of life?
It's hard. It's This is a journey of mastery. It's, unfortunately, well, there are courses on this. I'm lying.
There are courses on this as well. No way. There's courses on everything.
Okay, there are courses on, for instance, meditation. That would be the first step, I would say. Like, a lot of people, especially who aren't familiar with meditation, they think of like these Zen Buddhist monks in the mountains, the Shaolin temples, and they have on the gold robes.
I mean, that's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
They have some master with a long white beard slapping them with a stick, or they're like doing like kung fu in the rain, or like, look, all that stuff is the sensationalized, fictionalized version of like Eastern religion, meditation. But what you'll find is that like when you start really just sitting with yourself, meditating, doing deep work, staying in thought, journaling, and getting back to an undistracted place of your mind, you'll start to come up with ideas that are creative. Your juices will start to flow, and a lot of the chatter will fall away. If you think about it, like, I mean, it's almost, I don't want to say it's bad anymore, because the reality is we are always going to be connected from here on out, but we're always connected. I walk around the house with my phone, and when I walk from upstairs to downstairs, sometimes I'm scrolling on the phone, checking to see if someone messaged me in the 2 seconds that I haven't looked at it, and then I'll be on the toilet, I'm checking the phone, at stoplights, I'm looking at the phone, I'm on the computer all the time. We're never not connected. And there's a plus side to that. There's also a minus side. The minus side is sometimes it makes it really, really hard to calm down the chatter. In the silence of the mind is where we have the expansive space internally to create. It's very hard to create if you're consuming. You see, they're separate things. There are consumers and there are creators. And you can't really be creating if you're consuming. You might think that you are. You might think you're coming up with creative ideas, but your actual creativity has to come when you're not consuming. Like, you can't watch a YouTube video and make a YouTube video at the same time. It's one or the other, right? So for you, it's going to be the viewer and the listener, it's going to be important that you set aside a time every single day for you to just be with yourself. No phone. The internet's all around you anyway. The Wi-Fi is going through your brain anyway. But like, no phone, no TVs, just by yourself to sit. Maybe you choose to meditate with that. There are great apps for that. Headspace is a great app. They have little 10-minute meditations you can do. You can learn lots of different ways to calm the brain. But I think that that's the first step. Like, before we go super spiritual, just think on a practical level. How many hours a day do you spend connected? Spend some of that time disconnected and see what starts to happen to you, and see if you start to notice things connect.
Yeah, that's amazing. And maybe we'll have you back on the podcast to really talk about the super spiritual, because
Yeah,
I'm incredibly interested in that as well. But unfortunately, I don't think we have enough time today. But here's a question for you. Do you believe that anybody can achieve anything they set their mind to?
That's a good question, man. I think that, okay, do you want like the guidance counselor high school answer, or do you want the real answer?
No, I want the real answer.
Okay, I'll tell you both.
Okay.
The guidance counselor high school answer is yes, you can achieve anything you want. And I think there is a certain truth to that, but I think also that you can achieve anything that is in like alignment with what you really want. Sometimes you think you want something, but you either want it for the wrong reasons or you want it to please someone else. And so you'll say that you want it, but your actions don't show that. I think that you get what you want, but it has to be the deepest of wants, and it has to be followed by action. And I think that you can become whatever you set your mind to, but I honestly and truly believe that most people are not willing to go through the personal changes that it's going to take to become someone that they're not at the moment. In order to get what you don't have, you have to become someone who you're not yet. You have to step into a new version of yourself. And I think that many people are, they see guys like you online, and they think, if I just copy what Dan's doing, I'll achieve his level of success. Maybe, but it's not just copying your actions. It's a way of being. It's a way of changing your thinking. And most people aren't ready to make those changes. They're not willing to give up the bad habits of the past. They're not willing to give up limited mindsets. They're not willing to change or end relationships that don't serve them. They're not willing to make sacrifices. They're not willing to stay up late nights. They're not willing to cry a bit. They're not willing to read. How many people have I told just to read a book that they won't even read the book?
Yeah.
So you can have or do anything you want, but there's a cost to it. There's always a cost to it. You have to be willing to pay the price. And if you are, then you'll find most people, since they're not willing to pay the price, you'll be in a class of your own. There's not many people like you. If you look at like people who've gotten the ClickFunnels $1 million plaque, like there are many of them, but the pool of those people is very small relative to how many people are using ClickFunnels. There's not that many people like you. So if you're willing to go through that, of course you're going to get it, because the crowd at the top is actually much smaller than you think. Mm-hmm. You out there listening to this in the podcast right now think that either your idea is too saturated to work, there are too many people who are already ahead of you. It's not going to work because of all these different reasons. If you only knew that the room has like 50 people in it, if you only knew there was like 100 people and the rest were just posers, or the rest were just people who were wishing but not getting there, you'd be more encouraged, because you knew that it just took you getting through a bunch of different barriers. If you can pass all the tests, you'll make it. Just like any other thing, just like in school, you can't get your doctorate if you don't pass all the tests. You can't. So, and if I'm going off on a tear here. If people are so committed to this academic model of wanting to put in all this work to get these degrees, why aren't we as committed to ourselves to put in work for a few years to get what we want for our lives personally? Because we know that the degrees aren't working. We know that most degrees, by the time we receive them, are already outdated. We know that we're going into our adult lives in debt. We know that most of the degrees aren't even relevant to the careers that are out there, meaning that there's no match between education and career opportunity, yet we're willing to spend all this time and money and energy on this thing that doesn't create a result. Why can't we take the same mindset of feeling like we have to do something and say, I have to do this for me? If you put in the same energy and effort and intention and focus to that, you will get it. But the question is, are you willing to do that? If you've read 15 books in one class over a semester, why can't you read 15 books on business for your own business and start it? You can. You can focus in class, but you can't finish an online course. You can look at your stats on your online course, and you'll know that some people buy it and never open the course. They never even log in. Others, most people get 20% through, if that. I don't understand the disconnect. So yes, you can have whatever you want. Yes, you can be and do and have whatever you want, but there's just a certain mindset that you have to have. You have to understand it's going to take more than just wishing and wanting. It's going to take just as much effort as you would think anything else takes, and then some.
Yeah, and I completely agree as well. It's crazy. I always say, if people were willing to put the exact same effort, get 9 to 5, waking up at 6 a.m., going to their job, traffic, all those hours, read books, put them into your own business. I don't understand, but people aren't willing to do things when they're not forced to do things, right? It's it's just mind-blowing. But
I was talking to someone today, and I was like, you might have a boss. Sure, you have a boss at your job, but you are the CEO of your life. So you have to make decisions as the CEO of your life. Your boss is below you on the food chain. You run you. So figure out what you need to do. Amazing, man. So you have a new book coming out. I do. Well, it's in writing mode right now. So it's coming out. It'll be out, I'm guessing, 2020. So that's a year and a half from now when we're speaking, or maybe a year and a couple months. But this is the first time I've talked about this. So the world will know. It's called Wielding Power, and it's on
powerful.
It's on how you create the changes in your life to become the person that you know you are. And if you're listening to this right now, there's a version of you that you haven't been able to access because you've been scared that once you flip that switch, it's going to change you, and it will. And this book will show you how to flip that switch.
Amazing. So that's going to be out in a year and a half, about
maybe less, about a year.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. I'll probably be one of the first people to buy it. So.
Oh yeah.
And writing a book is challenging. I'm writing my first book right now because I don't have to write a book right now, but I actually listened to Grant Cardone in one of his interviews. He's one of my idols, and I just love his attitude. He's crazy, and I just aspire to be that crazy. I just aspire to be like that because it's amazing. Because that way, you're channeling, your most amount of creativity, and you're just always out there hustling. It's amazing. And so anyway, He said that he should have gotten his first book out during his drug years, during his rehab years, but everybody kept telling him, hey, you're not good enough. And so one of his biggest regrets was waiting until I think it was 45 or 50 or something like that to release the book. And then he became a best-selling author.
Damn, is he 50 already?
Dude, he's almost I don't want to mess this up, but I think he's almost 60.
That's great. That means I got plenty of time.
Yeah. No. But he's incredible. But listening to that, I was just like, wow, I need to get this book out because what am I waiting for? I'm trying to change people's lives, my age especially. Yep. And it's just I have all these ideas and I just need to get it out. But writing a book is challenging, man. It's challenging. So
very challenging.
Yeah.
It's great. It's like taking a piece of you and trying to translate it into these static characters that don't move. Your personality is very fluid, but to try to put on a page is hard.
Yeah, for sure. Now, what would the Daniel tell himself? Tell his Longhorn Steakhouse Daniel from 8 years ago. And what would he tell him? What would he tell that person who is getting yelled at for getting the butterballs wrong, and just being miserable back then, and just saying, I can't do this anymore, fuck this? What would you tell that
You know
person?
what? To be quite honest with you, he would say enjoy the ride, because looking back on Longhorn now, I don't miss it at all for any reason, but I do look back on that and say, okay, that was the beginning of something great. And I don't look back on it at the time. And in my book too, you have to understand too, the book, it's around here somewhere, I don't know, I have so many copies of it, whatever. The book was written by the mind of a 24-year-old, written by the mind, it was conceived by the mind of a 23, 24-year-old, written by the fingers of a 26 or 27-year-old, published by a 28-year-old, and now I'm 30. So looking back on the 23 or 24-year-old voice in my head, and I was about 22 when I quit the job, I was very angsty and anxious and a little bit mad. Now I'm not mad anymore. I look back on it and say, this is the start of something cool, so enjoy it. So now whenever I get anxious at something, I say, oh, this is the start of something cool, enjoy it. It's all about the journey, man. I would say enjoy it while you can, because things are going to get more fun, but they'll be more complicated,
Yeah, amazing. So now, as a final note to the audience, what would you have as a 60-second piece of advice, for anybody out there that just has a dream and maybe is afraid, or, just is afraid, it's not confident enough, they think they're not good enough. So maybe you've got some words of wisdom to throw on them.
Oh, I have some words of wisdom for you. Okay, you ready for this?
Right.
In fact, if you're listening to the podcast right now, make sure you watch the YouTube videos. I stare directly into the camera to pierce your soul. All right, here's the deal. Most people are afraid because they're afraid that the future won't turn out the way that they want to. You have a vision for how you want things to turn out, and you're afraid to act because you're afraid that if you do it wrong or things don't work out, the future won't turn out the right way. What you have to realize is that the future is now. Let me explain. This is going to be 60 seconds, okay? Your future is a cloud of potential around you that responds in relationship to the level of intent that you put out there. Now, in layman's terms, what that means is that the more that you focus on something, the more it creates the actual events in your life to line up to actually have the results you're looking for. You don't necessarily think of something and it's a fixed point in your future and then go towards that. Your future is happening right now. And as you make better and better decisions, your future, which is in front of you, changes, right? The more and more decisions that you make in the positive direction towards what you want, the more your future aligns itself to create the result that you want. It's not that you're running towards this fixed point in time. It's that you are creating it as you go along. If you go to it with that mindset of everything that I do counts towards this end result, then everything you do will end up building the thing that you wanted.
Amazing. Thank you so much, man. It's been an honor.
Thank you so much.
And, it's just been incredible. And I'm looking forward to having you back on the show, on the channel, on the podcast. And if you guys want to grab a copy of Rich20Something, I'll put a link right down below. So go grab a copy. It's life-changing, seriously, if you guys are in that beginner stage, right? Even if you guys are, the 6-figure stage and 7-figure, there's just words of wisdom in there. So thank you very much, Daniel. And,
thank you very much, Daniel.
Yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are on the YouTube. Subscribe to the podcast if you are on the iTunes. I think you can subscribe on iTunes, yeah. So, yeah, and then where can they find you? Instagram, Daniel DiPiazza.
You can find me, Daniel, at Daniel DiPiazza on Instagram and DanielDiPiazza.com.
Amazing. All right.
Cool.